Okay, hi everyone. In this tutorial, we're going to make the mechanical assembly here. If I go into my solid view by pressing Z and clicking here, we can see the parts more clearly. If you don't have these different colors here, you can simply click on your shading options and select random. Yours might look like this, but this random allocation is very useful for a task like this. Okay. A couple of things. As I mentioned in the first tutorial, there are lots of different software we could use to make something like this. And Blender is not a CAD specific software, so there are lots of online tools where we can make geared mechanisms. However, increasingly people are making tools that mean we can do stuff like this in Blender, especially with simple gears like this. And I thought this would be kind of a fun exercise to get you thinking about not only how to 3D print an object, but how to start thinking about movement and mechanical assemblies. Okay, so I'll just open the file I've been working on with you, and here we are. So first of all, you might notice that some of my collections here are a bit incomplete. I'm actually making some of these tutorials a little bit out of order, but I'm just going to hide, or maybe do a little quick reorganize. Looks like my sculpture is in the wrong collection. Just grab my sculptures and I'll put these, oh, they're still parented in the way they came in from the 3D scanner. Okay, so if that's still parented, see how that is just hidden under this world empty object? I just want to release that. So I'm going to click on the object and go Object, Parent, Clear Parent, and Keep Transform. And now we'll see it's no longer sort of categorized under this object world, which is probably just an empty object somewhere. I'll do the same for the other one. Object, Parent, Clear Parent, and Keep Transform. Okay, and that world object, I'm just going to delete it by pressing X. Okay, so I'm going to select both sculptures and I'll put them in a new collection called Sculpture. And then I'm going to hide my lights and camera, going to hide my books, going to hide my pens and my architecture. And now I've just got these two objects here. Okay, so let's just go, I might just go into like the layout menu here, and let's start making some things. So first of all, you might need to install an add-on to make a gear. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go Shift A to add mesh, and I have this thing here that says gears, but you probably won't have that there. So you'll just need to go to your preferences, and it should be, if I type in gear, or maybe it's extra objects, add mesh extra objects, that should get you there. Yes, it'll get you the gears and the pipe joints. Okay, so if you go into add-ons, just check that that's ticked. If it's not there, just go into extension, and you might have to install extra mesh objects, and then go into add-ons and just make sure both of those are ticked. You can have extra curve objects as well. We're not going to be using those today, but it's quite useful. You can get some shapes that can be quite handy. So with that plugin installed, I'll press Shift A to add a new object. And I'm going to go down into gears and I'll add a gear. Now something like this will pop up. It's way too big. So we'll just make a few small changes. I'm going to pop the teeth up to 20. So it's got more teeth. And I'm going to put the base at 0.1. And I'll put the width at also 0.1, which makes it less thick. And then the last change I'm going to make is the conical angle here. I'm going to change this to 45 because, as you remember from the beginning of the video, I have two gears that are meshing at a 45-degree angle. Okay, so that will do me for now. And now I'm going to scale it down. I'll scale it down and I'll put it in the middle of my space. So if you want this to go into the middle, you can just set all of these to 0, or you can hover over all of them and just press delete. So now we're at 0. Now a few settings that I've just decided I think work for this exercise, and you may as well follow them. Later on, if you want to customize and change, you can. But I'm going to have my gear be 60 millimeters across. Right now it's 40 centimeters across. So I could keep scaling down until I get, you know, to 0.06, or I could type in here, just on one of them, 0.06. Now you'll see now that our scale numbers are all different because I've just scaled one axis. But what's handy is I can just copy that scale from the X, Control C, and paste, Control V, and paste. And we need to have all of these the same because we need to keep the angles and the ratio of all the gears the same. Okay, so there's our gear. What I'm going to do now is I will apply the scale by Command A, or Object Apply Scale. And I'm going to focus my viewport on it. View frame selected just means that I'm looking directly at it. And I'll probably, for now, I'll probably hide these two sculptures. Okay, so here's my gear. I'm going to make a few changes. First of all, I'm going to fill in this hole. So I'll just go into edit mode by pressing tab. I might also just change into solid mode by pressing Z. Okay, it's a bit better. Now I need to go into edge selection mode by pressing 2, and I want to select all of these ones going around, but I don't want to click them all one at a time. That'll take forever. If I click one, and then if I click Shift Option and click again, that will click the whole edge loop. There's a few shortcuts, like if I click one and then I click Shift Command, it'll get all of the ones in between. And it might be a little bit different on Mac and PC. But basically Shift and either Option or Control, you can play around with it and it should get you pretty quickly to the whole selection you want. Now I'll just press F for fill, or we could also go, oh, where is it? Face fill. I just press F and we've filled that hole. Now let's do the same thing underneath. So I'll click here and then I'll click Shift Option and I've got the whole edge loop. Press F. Okay, and now that's all filled and ready to go. So the next thing we need to do is we need to put a hole in the middle, but it's not going to be a circular hole. It's going to be a hole that is non-circular, so that whenever this is rotating, it rotates our crankshaft as well. So I'm going to make, in this case, I want to check that my 3D cursor, where's my 3D cursor? There it is. I want that to be in the middle of my world. I'll show you why. If I add a cylinder, if I go here, Shift A, add a cylinder, it's going to add it, if I scale it right down, it's going to add it where the 3D cursor is. But we're working with the middle of the space so that everything is centered. So I'm going to put my 3D cursor at the middle as well. So I'll just delete that cylinder. If I press Shift S, I can do lots of things with the 3D cursor. And I'm going to go cursor to world origin. There's a lot of useful things you can do with the 3D cursor. You can position the 3D cursor on a specific part of an object, and it can do all sorts of useful stuff. Okay, but let's just have it at the middle. So now when I Shift A, add my cylinder, it's in the right position. Now, before I click anything, I want to change some things on the add menu. Unfortunately, the add menu disappears after I click off it, it's gone. So if you want to make those changes, you just want to do it before you start working with your cylinder. I'm going to turn the vertexes down to 6, so it's a hexagon. And that's pretty much all I need right now. I'll just scale it right down. Scale it down. I'm going to have it in the middle of my gear. And I want this hexagon, I'm going to make it 9 millimeters side to side. So if I look from the top, if I want it 9 millimeters across, you'll see that this distance is different to this distance. So at the moment, it's the Y that I'm looking at that I want to be 9 millimeters. So I guess I could scale it down until I get to 9, or just as before, I can say 0.009. And then I want to look at that Y value, and I want to copy that and paste it to the X and the Z, just so it's still a regular hexagon. I don't want to have, like, you know, a sort of a shape that's no longer has its rotational symmetry, because that won't work for us. Okay, so our X and our Y are at 0.0. Okay, yes, our x is at 0.009, sorry, our y is at 0.009, our x is at something else, which is this distance, and our z doesn't really matter so much. I'm going to scale it sz just to make it a bit longer. Okay, so now I'm going to start naming things. This is going to be our, let's call it our hex underscore shaft, and we can call our gear, that's fine. I'm going to make a copy of the hex shaft because we're going to use it for two different things. If I press Shift D and I move my mouse, it'll make a copy, but I want that copy to stay in the middle. So I've got two ways to do that. I can either just hit delete and it will go back to the middle, or I can press Shift D and then just left click my mouse straight away and it hasn't moved. So now I've actually got three of them, but I've got my hex shaft, and then that extra one I created, I'll just delete it. I just want two of them. At the moment, you can't really see the difference because they're exactly the same, but I'm going to rename this and call it hex shaft underscore cutter. Okay, so why did I do that? Well, if I look from the top and I go to wireframe mode, what I want to do is with the cutter, I just want to make it a tiny bit bigger. If I press S and just drag it up, I want it a tiny bit bigger than the shaft that I'm going to insert in, because we're going to 3D print this, and if we 3D print a hole and a piece going inside the hole at the exact same size, it might not fit properly. So it's good to just leave a tiny bit of play. We could measure this, usually, you know, we might leave like a fraction of a millimeter. I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, and then I'm going to print it and test it, because every 3D printer can be a little bit different depending on its accuracy, so I'm kind of hoping here more than knowing. And if this all works, we might make some notes in our course document of what exactly that gap should be. Okay, but let's go back to solid mode, and now I'm going to use this cutter to put a hole in the gear. So I'll select the gear, and I'm going to add a modifier here from the wrench menu, which is the modifiers menu, and just add Boolean. Okay, now I'm going to select my hex shaft cutter, and now if we hide the hex shaft cutter and the hex shaft, we've cut that hole in our gear exactly in the middle. Because the gear is in the middle of our space and the cutter is in the middle, that hole should be perfectly in the middle, which is what we want. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to organize myself a little bit better too. I'm going to put the hex shaft cutter in a new collection. I'll press M for move, and I'm going to make a new collection and call it Boolean cutters. Just because we might use more than one object to cut things, and then we can just tick and untick it to hide it. And if we come up close, we can see what that's doing. When I hide it, you'll see that there's the shaft and there's that little gap. I just noticed when I zoomed in, I'm getting some clipping here, which is a bit annoying to look at. We can fix that by going to View and just put Clip Start, and I'll just add a 0 there. So my camera will allow me to look closer and closer without clipping. All right, so let's keep moving. So here's our gear. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to make a second gear. So if I just look at our object here, I've applied the scale, that's all good. We've got nice neutral location and rotation. So now I can just press Shift D and duplicate the object, and the duplicate also is at 0, 0, 0, that's good. Now I'm just going to rotate by 90 degrees, R90. And if I do that in the orthographic view, it's just rotated it on the Y-axis here. Don't know what that infinitesimally small x is, but I can just set that to 0. All right, so now it's where things get a little imprecise. One thing I don't know off the top of my head is the exact way these mesh together, right? If I put them like this, well, that's not right. The gears won't touch. And if I put them like this, where, well, we can't really see. Our gears are, in fact, facing the exact same way. So first of all, I'm going to rotate my gear the correct number of degrees so that I can see where it's going to mesh. So if you think about it, at the moment this has a straight rotation of 90 degrees, but we want to rotate it according to how many teeth it has. And we know that it has 20 teeth, so what I could do is 360 divided by 20, which would give me 18. If I rotate it 18 on the y-axis, on the x-axis, sorry, Rx18, it's actually rotated it by an entire interval. So now we're back in the same problem. So actually, instead of rotating it 18, I'll just undo that. I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis 9, which will be half of that interval. So Rx9. Okay, and we can see that our rotation here is now 81. It's saying on the y just because we haven't applied the rotation, so it's been rotated in one direction, so that is actually turning up on the y, even though we're looking down the x-axis. But that's okay for now. All right, so now our gear teeth are sort of matching up. So what we can do is I can sort of look at it and go, okay, well, maybe I move it down a bit, GZ, and I can move it in a little bit, GX, but we'll start to see that we're really cutting in here. So that in the real world is not going to work. And if I look inside, we'll see it. So I'm just going to GX, GZ until we're not cutting in at all. And I think that's a pretty good guess, should be within a fraction of a millimeter or so, of where our gears are definitely going to mesh. If we connect them this way, when this one turns, it will turn this one. I might get some advice from a friend on how to be a little bit more precise with this, but also there's increasingly some really nice gearing tools being built in Blender, and some of them might do this calculation for us. Because basically we'd have to be sort of calculating the depth of our teeth and this angle here to work out that exact spacing. But to me, if we're really close and we're not colliding, that's sort of what I'm going to use at this point. But as I learn more, maybe I'll update this. Okay, so there's our two gears that are going to rotate. Oh, I forgot to do something. I've made a bit of a mistake, actually. What I wanted to do was to keep the gear with this hole cut in it, but I didn't apply my modifier. So you'll see that this is actually facing the correct position, but it doesn't have the the modifier cut in it. Well, there's two things I could do here. One, I could quickly just delete this one, apply the modifier, put it back in position, or I could probably use these numbers and make one with the modifier applied and put it in the right spot. I'll show you how to do that. It's a nice way to correct a mistake in a different way. Okay, so I might keep this original before I cut the hole in, just in case I need it. You never know. And I'll just duplicate it, and I'll hide gear original, and I'll call this gear 1, and I'll call this one gear 2, just so we're very clear. Now on gear 1, I'm going to apply the modifier. So now that I apply this, if I move it, we'll keep having our cut. Whereas before, if I go back to the one that has the modifier on it, if I move this, it's only going to cut where that shape is. And as soon as I move it away from the shape, we're not cutting anymore. So that was my mistake. I forgot to apply my modifier. But okay, gear 1 now has the modifier applied. One other thing I'll do to gear 1 is I'm going to just do a little bit of a bevel. So I'm going to hide my hex shaft. And what I want to do, I just want to make these edges a little bit smoother so that when we put that shaft in, it sort of fits in a little bit more easily. I'll show you what I mean. Because we've just done the modifier, it's actually got all of these edges still selected. So what I can do in edge mode is just press Shift and deselect the edges inside. Okay. Now I should be able to just press Control B to bevel. And we don't have to do it too much, and we can just change this to something like, I don't know, 0.002. No, that's too much. So let's go back, 0.005. Whoa, sorry, I need another 0, I'm guessing. 0.0005, there we go. And I can add another segment if I want. And what that'll basically mean is when we put that hex shaft in, it'll just fit in a little bit more easily. Okay, so that's looking better. Okay, so now let's make another copy of gear 1 and let's put it in the correct place. So I'll just press Shift D and left click. I'll call this gear 3, and I'm just going to copy the transforms of gear 2 onto gear 3, and I'll hide gear 1 so we know what we're looking at. Okay, so we want this location. I'm going to press Option C, whatever your copy paste is, or Command C on a Mac, probably Control C on a PC, and Command V, Command C, Command V, and same for the rotations. 90, 90, 81. I can just type that in. So I can go 90, 90, 81, and we should be in the exact alignment with the first gear we made. Okay, so I'll just hide gear 2 and I'll reveal gear 1, and that looks good to me. They look like they are where they should be. Okay, so now this gear 2, I'll delete it, X to delete, and I'll rename gear 3 as gear 2. Okay, we've solved that first little mistake. Hopefully it'll be my last, but who knows. All right, so we've got these 2 gears. Okay, so now what? Well, what I want to do, I'm going to put them inside a box, and we're going to look at, you know, how these things are going to have to move in space. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to add a cube, and I'm just going to make all of the dimensions 0.1 and enter. So you can left click and drag if you want to change all of the dimensions to one thing. 0.1 is good for me. And then I want to have this sitting on the ground of the space. So given that we've just made this like 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters, I can just move it up by 5 centimeters. So I can say GZ 0.05. And if I look from the front, that should be exactly on my x-axis. That's great. Let's look from the front also. I'm going to go into edit mode, press tab, so that I know this is the front, and I'm going to be in face selection mode, which I can click up here or just press 1, 2, 3 to go into edge, vertex or face. And I'm going to click the front face, X, and delete that face because I want to see inside this box. Okay, so I can't leave the gears down here because at the moment they'd be sort of rubbing against the box. And maybe also I'm going to give the box the thickness that it will have when we laser cut it. That's another thing we can do. So I'll press Command A, is that right? Command A, yes. And I will apply the scale. So you'll see the scale here at the moment is 0.05. I'm going to go Command A, apply scale. So now the scale is all 1, the dimensions are the same. I could also do Object, Apply, Scale. And the reason I did that is I'm going to add a modifier called the Solidify modifier. And that references the scale. So if the scale's weird, the Solidify won't work. And I'm just going to put a thickness of 0.003, which is 3 millimeters, because that's how thick our laser cut wood is going to be. Okay, so here's our gears. First thing I think that seems logical is to move them up. GZ, okay, so how far? I don't know, maybe 4 centimeters, GZ 0.04. That looks too high. Let's say GZ 0.03. That seems fine. Okay, so I've moved them up 3 centimeters. Okay, so at the moment, if this one spins and this one spins, that's cool. We're going to have a handle here that's turning this one, and then this one is going to turn our sculpture on top. But at the moment, if we put them in the box, they would just fall straight down. So that's no good. So that's where we're going to start using this hex shaft. So if I just zoom in a bit and bring it up, so our hex shaft can sit in there. And now because of this shape, if this turns, then this will turn. So what we can do is I'm just going to have a little round pin that goes into a hole here so that this won't fall down and it will just spin and rotate from the base of the box. So what I can do, first of all, I'm going to move this so it's flat with that, just because it's nice. We're going to use the snapping tool, which is this little magnet here. And I'm going to press G and Z, so I just move on the Z axis, and I've got my snapping set to edges. So if I press GZ and hover my mouse over an edge, I want to hover it until the top of my object is aligned with one of these edges. And that should be nice and, I don't know, should look good. Okay, I'll turn my snapping off. You can turn on snapping by pressing Shift and Tab together, which can be handy because sometimes we go in and out of snapping all the time. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to grab this little face under there. Another way you could do it is looking from the front. I could go into wireframe mode and go into, I don't know, vertexes and grab all these vertexes. Same, I've got that face there. Okay, so I want to make this round, this hexagonal bit round. And you're going to need actually another modifier for that, which is called the, what is it called? What's it called? What modifier did I install? Edit. Loop tools. It's really great. Okay, so again, just go into your preferences and you should be able to look up in your extensions loop tools, and you might have to click install here, and then just double check in your add-ons if you type in loop and make sure that's ticked. And then it should pop up here when you're in edit mode. You'll have this little thing that says edit. Okay, so what are we going to do with this? I'll show you. When I'm in edit mode here, first of all, I've got just this face at the bottom of our hex shaft selected. I'm going to right click and subdivide. And you can see it's just made some extra vertexes on the hexagon. I'm going to right click and do it again. And now we've got lots and lots of vertexes. So what we can do with that, I'm going to press E for extrude and then just click and pretty much do nothing. But now I'm going to go into loop tools and I'm going to click circle. And you can see what it's done. It's quite cool. It's made the hexagon a circle. And now if I press S for scale, I've got a circle coming from the hexagon. It's super handy. Like doing that yourself is really difficult and annoying to do. That tool just does it really nicely for you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have something like, if I just extrude that down, we're going to have something like that, a little pin that's going to stick into the floor so that when this turns, this will turn smoothly. Okay, but I want things to be a little bit precise because who knows what modifications we're going to make later. So I want to make these sort of standard sizes. So if you remember, we made our hexagon 9 millimeters across. We could even start writing this down actually. You can make a little, sometimes I make notes in the scripting editor. It's not really what it's designed for, but it can be kind of handy. If you go into the scripting workspace, you can just go like new, and I'm going to say like gear, 20 teeth, 60 millimeters diameter, and it's actually 5 millimeters height. And then I can do hex shaft. We can say, so this is usually where you write code, but you can write stuff here. I'm going to call these measurements. What was our hex shaft? It was 9 millimeters across. And now we're looking at, let's call it the pin, and I'm going to make it 5 millimeters diameter. Let's be more. Diameter, if you remember mathematics, is twice the radius. It's, the width of a circle. Okay. Whoop. Okay, that's cool. I might just go back into my layout. I don't need to see the script anymore. So I want this circle to be exactly 5 millimeters diameter, or pretty darn close. So I'll go into wireframe view, and here I've still got the circle selected. If you don't have it selected, you can always just, go into edit mode and grab it in any way that kind of works for you. If I do it here, I'd have to be careful that I don't get all of these other bits. So the easiest way is probably, if I'm in this situation, go into face select, and then I can go vertex or edge, and I've still just got these ones without all the bits around there. But okay, so let's go looking from the top. I'll go out of edit mode, and I'm going to shift A, and I'm just going to add a curved circle, and it's probably come in really large. If we go into item, we can see it, and I'm going to make that 0.005, 5 millimeters across. So there it is, and my pin was pretty close, but a little bit too big. So I'll go back to my hex shaft, press tab, and I'm just going to scale it till it matches. This is not super exact. Technically I should do this with snapping, but I think here we'll be within 1/10 of a millimeter at least. So I think it's pretty close. Okay. All right, so here's our pin. The last thing I'll probably need to do is, if I press the question mark or the backspace, I can isolate select it. And if I press Z and go into solid view, Oh, I thought there'd be a hole there, but there's not. Okay, so that's great. We don't need to fill that hole. Let's look from the front view, and the last thing I might do is we're going to cut this hole all the way down. I'll go into wireframe mode, and I might go into vertexes just to check I've got all that. And we can bring that maybe not all the way down, because then it will be touching the table and there might be some friction, but down to there seems pretty good, so it will be free spinning. And then we can bring this down further as well. Just so it's really just like, we're going to cut a hole in this later, but this will be spinning inside that hole. Okay, so that's cool. But there's one other problem with this part here, is that technically there's nothing to stop this sliding down here. So we just want to add a tiny little little shelf or a little flange or a little additional extruded diameter here to stop the gear moving vertically out of place. So if we go into edit mode and just go into our loop cut, oh no, aha, okay, I have made a mistake here. We can't loop cut right now because of what we did down here. It's broken our edge loops. I didn't see that coming. Okay, all right, I'm going to solve that another way. Basically, I made a small mistake here, which is when I extruded these edges up here, it's broken my edge loop system, which is a little bit annoying. If I'd done it before this part, it wouldn't have been a problem, but there's another way around. I'm just going to grab my face here. I'll make sure I'm out of loop cut. Grab my face here, and I'm going to G for grab, bring that down, and then I'm just going to extrude a few more faces up, and that will give me the edge loops I want. Okay, so maybe I'll do some exact things. I'm going to put snapping on, GZ, whoops, snap exactly to there, and then I'm going to go down exactly, I don't know, let's say 3 millimeters. So GZ minus 0.003. Okay, now I'm going to press E for extrude and just click, and then I'll say GZ 0.003. Okay, so there is, oh yeah, you can see this extra edge here. That's not great. Just want to check if there's any other extra edges. That's why our edge loop was not working. Okay, I wonder if I can just get rid of that by dissolving that edge. I can. Okay, good. The reason that we don't want extra edges is technically my edge loop, now it works again. Looks like there's another vertex. Oh no, that's good, yeah. The edge loop is working correctly from above that area. And that's probably because, yeah, it's just because of these extra edges down here. All right, okay, so where was I? Right, making this shelf. Let's just grab that face there, and I'll extrude it back up so it's at the correct height for the final EZ. And okay, if it's doing that, that means I'm not extruding just on the Z axis. So I'll tap Z again to make sure it's only moving on Z. Then I can tap my snapping and just GZ, make sure it's snapped perfectly to that line. Now I'll go into wireframe mode, face select, and I'll just grab these faces, and I'm going to press E and then click. Let's just look from the top, see which way we're facing. Yeah, that should be fine. So now I'm going to press SX 1.5 and SY 1.5. So that's just made an even extrusion, if I go back into my solid mode, of this little shelf here. So now technically, if I turn off my snapping, if I lift up and down, that should just be sitting nicely on that edge. Okay, all right, so now that is doing what it's supposed to do. The last thing that we will probably have to do here is send this rotation up this way somewhere. So if I go back into edit mode, I grab this face, we might just E, go all the way up. I need to go into my wireframe to see how high I'm going. Press GX and then turn on my snapping. Now I'm probably not going to make it exactly this height, because that might make it difficult to squeeze into the shape. So I'm going to just come down maybe 2 millimeters, GZ minus 0.002, give it a little bit of extra space. And then what we're going to do is we'll have a little pin coming in here that can connect to our shape on the top, which will mean we'll just need to cut a very simple hole in our laser cut box. Okay, the last thing I might do, maybe we'll make that hole now. So with this top part selected, I'll go back into edit mode. I'm going to do the same trick and make that circle. So, or maybe before I do that, I'm just going to pop an edge loop here just in case I get back into that same problem I was in before. I don't really need these edge loops. I'm just going to put them there in case, you know, I want to preserve the topology of the rest of this shape. Could be useful. All right, I might hide this box for a second. I'll just rename it and call it box. I'm going to hide it. And if I go here and press tab, I'm in face selection mode. I'll go into vertex selection and I'll right click and I'll subdivide and I'll do it again. So I've got quite a few vertexes and I'll go back to this loop tools and hit, whoops, not circle, no. Okay, so we need to extrude once, which is basically to create some edges so that we're not like going from a hexagon here to a circle here. So I'll just press Command Z and I'm going to press E for extrude and click. Now I'm going to press circle and I'll just press S for scale and scale it in. And let's go back and make sure it's that nice 5 millimeters again. So I can just look from the top using my orthographic view and I'm just gonna, I'll just really only need to look at one of these vertexes. Okay, so that's extremely close. So I think we're pretty safe there. And the next thing I might do is I might extrude it down. So we're making a hole. But before I do that, we're going to change this from being a circle to what we call a D shaft or a D socket. In this case, it's going to be a circle with a straight line going across it. And the reason for that is that our circle down here, we want that to spin without rotating the box. But up here, we want this to spin and rotate whatever's on top of it. So if we have a circular hole, that won't work because a circular hole with a round shape in it, they can move, they won't be locked together. So that should be pretty easy for us to fix. I'm going to go into wireframe mode, and here I'm going to make sure I'm looking just at my top circle, that's good. And I'm going to select, I'll be in my my shaded view here, or my solid view, something like maybe one, shift select, I'm getting some vertexes. I'm going to get 7 vertexes here, and I'll just go into wireframe, check that I haven't got anything else by accident, okay? And then with those 7 vertexes, I'm going to press SX0, which means I'm going to scale them all on the x-axis by 0, SX0. So now they're flat. Okay, so that's one part of it done. Then I'm just going to turn my snapping off for a second. I'm going to press G and X, and I'm going to bring them back up to be in line with the circle. So I can actually use my vertex snapping here, and I can just press GX. Oh, have to turn it on. GX, and there, I've got that snapped up. So now I've got a 5 millimeter D shaft. And if I go out of edit mode and back into solid mode, press my middle mouse, we should see, we haven't extruded in yet, but we've got this shaft here. So now if I press go into face selection mode, we can extrude this down. I'm going to do one other thing, which is a little bit interesting. I'm going to, actually no, I'll do that later. I'm going to make this just a tiny bit bigger, because remember, just as we did with the hex, this is going to be our hole. So I'm going to be in wireframe mode, may as well go into edge mode, and I'm just going to make this just a tiny bit bigger than the shaft, because we're going to have this rule that our shaft is 5 millimeters. So the hole is going to be just a tiny bit bigger, just to make sure it fits properly. Okay, so now if I go back into solid mode, I'm going to I'll turn off my snapping, and I'm going to press E, and it's naturally snapped on the Z-axis. That's good. So it's moving on Z, and we can bring it down by, I don't know, I'm just going to snap it back up, GZ, and I can bring it down exactly by GZ minus 0.005. So now that's like a 5 millimeter hole. Or maybe, I mean, here, I don't think it really matters if it's okay, let's leave it at 5 millimeters, and then we'll see if we need to adjust it. We'll leave it there and see if that makes sense. So there's our hole. Okay, so now we've got, I think, something pretty good. If I bring back the box, that all makes sense. So now this can spin, and we've got a hole up here so that if we have something coming through here, it'll fit into that D shaft hole and inherit the rotation from this shaft. Okay, so let's do the same thing here. This is where we're going to create our rotation with the handle, which of course later you could swap for a motor if you wanted. So I'm going to use this D shaft and see, we might have already made some of the bits we need. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate it and I'll rotate it 90 degrees. And let's just think about it for a second. I think I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees, because I think I might use the same trick of having that little D shaft here. And I'm going to have it so that it'll be something like, let's just go into wireframe mode. Okay, so we've done that rotation. Remember, we rotated this gear by 9 degrees. So let's do the same thing on this one. I'm just going to go R9. Okay, so that's going the wrong way. Let's go R minus 9. Okay, so now we're rotated the correct way. I'm just going to press GZ until we are nicely in alignment. Now this, it's not as exact as I'd like it to be. I'm sort of working a little bit by eye. I'm just going to press GY. GZ. Okay, I think that's pretty good. All right, so now this should be aligned with the hole here. Okay, so we're going to use part of this, and we've got that, if I press GX, we can see inside. We've got that D shaft hole there, which we're going to use. So what I'll do is, I might go into my wireframe mode. I'm just going to press GX, and let's bring that, we can bring it quite close up to the end there, I suppose. And perhaps what else we could do is so I think this part, this is sort of like what the outside of our shaft is going to be. So what we could even do is I could go here, and I don't know if we'll use it, but we can just grab this, and a cool thing we can do is we can right click and say separate selection. So now that's a different object now. So I can just press GX, pop that over here, and then I guess we just want this to go into here, maybe also with another little shelf to stop it going in too far. So that probably means probably don't need a lot of this back part of it, unless of course we could keep all of this. I could just grab these edge loops, GX, I could do that. Yeah, why not? Bit of extra geometry, but that's fine. Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. And then we just need the hex part to go back in here. Then I think this part should be kind of done. So I'm just going to press the question mark or the backslash and just see the bit that I want to grab, which if I go into edit mode and grab my edges, it should just be these edges. Okay, I'll press the tab again or question mark, look down my y-axis, and if I just press E, and okay, so now I'm moving all over the place, so I want to press X, and let's just go straight through. Okay, and now with those edges still selected, I can turn on my snapping, go to edge, and press GX. Go out here, okay, that looks good. And if I go into edit mode, I've still got these edges selected, so I can just press F for fill, and that's filled that in there. And then I might move this shelf just a little bit closer. So if I go into edit mode, Wireframe. Wireframe's important here because we want to grab everything front and back. If I'm just in solid and I do this, I won't have gotten the things that are, that are behind here, right? Because they're being occluded. But if we're in wireframe, we get everything that we can see, which is, front and back. So then I'm just going to press GX and I'm just going to eyeball this. I don't want everything to be too precise here because it's the physical world. I want to leave some little gaps, of just, less than a millimeter here and there. If we're prototyping something really exactly, we might, get this even more precise. But we're working here with plastic, so the plastic has a tiny bit of flexibility, and it's also the first time I've tried this. So I'm sort of making a few guesses as to just leaving these little gaps, like we did with the hole versus the hex shaft and so on. Okay, right, so then we've got our crank handle. Now our crank handle is going to be like an L shape. And an L shape for a round object can actually be a little bit annoying to make. I'll show you what I mean. I'll quickly do the wrong thing and I'll show you why it's annoying to make. If I add a cylinder, make it like, I don't know, quite round, scale it down. Okay, and I'll just GX here, turn off my snapping. Okay, so like if I want to make this cylinder, I'll make it longer and smaller. If I want to make this an L shape, and I could grab that face, if I like extrude that up and then I rotate it like 45 degrees, you can see a problem. It shrinks. So if I try extruding it this way, or even if I try 90 degrees, it's going to be even worse, 90, we're going to have this horrible, it's not going to be a nice turn. And it's a slightly kind of tricky shape to make, and there are ways we can get around it to make it. But to be perfectly honest, this, even if we just fudge it, like if I go 45 and I sort of try to scale it till it's kind of right again, then I could extrude it 45. I don't know. It's just not going to be nice. That's the easiest way I can say. It's not going to be nice at all. I'm almost there, but we can do better. There's some built-in tools. So in that plugin you installed, Extra Objects, it's got something that does that for us. So I'm going to go Shift A, Mesh, and we're going to add a pipe joint. And that's exactly what we're talking about. We're going to add an elbow. All right. Now, by default, it's not coming in at 90 degrees. So I'll change this angle to 90. That's cool. That's all we need. 32 divisions. Yeah, for now, I suppose. Okay, so now I'm going to scale it down, S.1, probably S.1 again. All right. So let's think how big we should make it. Well, we know that we've been using a 5mm D shaft here. Our hex shaft has been 9mm, so I guess maybe what this thing should be is maybe like 8mm or something. So in that case, I'm actually going to remake, I could put in a circle and scale it down, but I'll just put in another pipe joint and I'll put in those measurements exactly. So I'll put in that elbow, but instead of the radius being 1 meter, I'll make that radius 0.004, which will be 8mm in diameter. And then I'll make this really small, and we should be getting pretty close to what we want, I think. Okay, right. So this, even though I put in 0.004, it's gone to 0.1. So that means it's got a maximum or a minimum radius of 1 centimeter, but that's easy to scale from 1 centimeter, or yes, 1 centimeter to 8mm would just be S.8. Now that, to my mind, should be, nope, I've done something wrong here. S.5, S.8. Okay, I think I was twice too big. Okay. So if that hex shaft is 9, now we are at, oh yes, because our radius was 1 centimeter. So therefore our diameter was 2 centimeters. So I had to halve it and multiply it by 80%. Okay, I'll just redo that. Sorry, the maths in my head was faster than explaining it. I'll just do that one more time. Going to add a pipe joint elbow. The maximum radius is 1 centimeter, which means this is 2 centimeters tall. So I'm going to have to scale it by a half, S 0.5. And then if that's now 1 centimeter high, if I go S 0.8, now our diameter of the tube should be 8 millimeters. Okay. Now, I guess that height, maybe that height's okay, whatever that was. Like the height, according to this, is about 4 centimeters for our little handle. That's cool. Maybe I'll leave it that way. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate it, and I'm going to make one object that has a handle going this way and then a shaft going this way, so that when we spin this, we spin this. So easy way to do that is if I Shift D to duplicate and click, just so it hasn't moved, then I can SZ -1 and I can RZ 180. Okay, so I've just flipped it around basically, and then I guess its height, I can move it down perhaps exactly by its height. Let's see if that works. GZ -0.044. I'll probably have to do that again. GZ -0.044. Nah, it wasn't exactly what I wanted. Okay, that's cool. All right, I'm just going to use my snapping, put it in the exact same place. To be honest, that looks like it's going to be too tall, because when we spin it, we're going to hit the ground. So no, I don't like that. I'm just going to change that a little bit. So we said this is 4 centimeters high. Let's make this whole thing a little bit smaller. I'm going to go into wireframe mode, grab all of these. I'll move them up by, let's say, 2 centimeters. GZ 0.002. Oh, that's 2 millimeters, sorry. GZ 0.02. That looks like, okay, let's do a middle point there. Let's move by 1 centimeter. GZ 0.03. Sorry. GZ 0.01. And here I will GX 0.01. Okay, so we're still symmetrical on that. I think should be a better size. So I'll just mirror that before as I did. Shift D and then left click straight away. Scale Z, SZ -1. Rotate Z 180, enter. Then GZ, bring it down. And then I can turn on my snapping and just GZ, snap it up. So that, I think that still might hit the ground. I'm just going to really quickly check this. I'm just going to join it. Command J, put it here. Oops, turn off my snapping. And I need to, okay, I'm just going to check this quickly, then I'll explain what I'm doing. I'm just going to go put my 3D cursor there, put the origin of my object to the 3D cursor, and now I'm going to roll it around, RX. Ooh, yeah, it looks like it's going to hit the ground. RX. Yeah, that's no good. That's no good at all. All right, so let's make these distances even shorter. So I'll just go back to before I join them. Okay. Okay, so let's just move this up another centimeter. GZ 0.01. Oops, sorry, I wasn't in my wireframe mode. I only grabbed half. GZ 0.01. And yeah, maybe I'll just keep it a little off center like that. Let's see how that works. So Shift D, scale Z -1, rotate Z 180, grab Z, bring it down, and snapping turned on. GZ, now they're overlapping. Select them both. Now I'm going to press Command J, which will join them, or we could also go Object Join. So it's halfway finished to being joined. If I go into edit mode, we're going to have double vertexes here. I'll turn off my snapping because it's joined it, but it hasn't really, sort of unified their mesh. But that's really easy to fix. If I press A and select all of the vertexes and press M for merge, or I can go into vertex, is it vertex or mesh? Merge by distance. And that will basically say anything that is closer than 0.0001 meters, which would be, I don't know, 0.01 millimeters or something like that. Very small distance, it's going to merge them together. So now if I grab these vertexes and just right click to undo the move, it's all the one object. So that's great. So then our crank handle is going to go somewhere like that, but it's going to need to have that little pin with the D shaft on it to go into the hole there. So what we can do is, I think we said our D shaft, our pin was 5 millimeters high. I'll just move this one for a second. I might hide it. I think we can just make it from this. So what I'm going to do, I'll go into edit mode, wireframe, grab all my vertexes here, and just as we did before, E for extrude, click, and I'll just scale it a little bit so we can see that's where our shaft is going to be. And then I might just make a measuring item that's exactly 5 millimeters, because I think this we made it a little bit bigger because it's our cutting hole. So I'll just add temporarily a circle, and I'll scale it 0.001. So there it is, it's a bit small, but I'll make its size here 0.005, nice, and I'll rotate it on the y-axis RY90, and I'm just going to look down my x-axis, and it's going to be exactly where we want our D shaft to be. It's a little bit imprecise. It's just going to have these two objects and press question mark, so I've only got these selected. I'm going to press G, X, just want to check that I'm in the right spot. Okay, I think it's pretty good, but let's just have a look through our orthographic view. No, it's no good. I'm just going to move it. Okay, and I'm going to pop it right in the middle. Again, this is not like numerically accurate, but we should be well within, you know, 1/10 of a millimeter here. Okay, so that's all right. And then I'll just bring it out a little bit so we know exactly what we're looking at. Press my question mark to bring back all of our objects. Now I'm just going to have these two, and I'll press my question mark so I can just check what I'm looking at. And I'm going to scale this down to, okay, first of all, I'm going to move it. GZ. We're not being super precise here. I might think of a better way to do this and re-record, but for now, I just want to get you guys moving. Okay, so now that should be very close, GX, to that 5 millimeter mark. Okay, I'll just delete my little curve. Now here, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to make that that D shape with 7, I'll have to check, hold on. Okay, then I'm going to just look down the x-axis, and we need to match up this little D socket with the shaft that we want to make here. It's pretty easy, bit of a fiddle, but it's not too bad. So this is our our hex sort of pin here, and if you remember, we rotated everything by 9 degrees so that the teeth would mesh here. So I just want to get rid of that 9-degree rotation so that we're looking flat down the axis and we can use our transform tools properly. So I'll put Y back at 270. Now that's horizontal, and if I go into my shaft and go into edit mode, what you can do, if you don't know which vertexes to select, I can just go into solid mode to make it really clear, do that old trick of shift command click to get the whole circle, and go back down the x-axis, look in wireframe, and let's go into edit vertex mode, and we can see which ones it is here. So I just want to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that'll do us. Now I'll press SZ0, and again I'm going to bring them down, GZ, and I'll put them in line with this vertex. So I'll turn my snapping on, set it to vertex, and GZ, boom. Okay, so that should be a pretty good fit. That should be, again, a 5mm D-pin with a slightly bigger hole. And now if I go into edit mode, I'll just go back and get that whole edge loop again. Shift Command left click. It's not letting me get it. That's annoying. Okay, looks like I'll have to get it in a few clicks. Whoops. Okay, that's good. Because what I want to do is I want to fill this hole, F for fill, and then I want to E and just extrude that pin out. And now we'll just move this into position, GX, and we'll have to work out how deep to make that pin. Again, I think because we're working with real objects here, we want to give everything, oh, my snapping's still on, GX, a little bit of tolerance. And I'm going to go into my wireframe mode, and we can see we made the hole that deep, so I'm just going to edit mode. We've still got these selected. Edge mode was good. I can see what I'm doing a bit better. And I'll just press GX, and I'll just I'm almost going to match that gap. So yeah, so we've got just a little bit of extra space. That's pretty good. What else have we missed here? So I've got a little shelf there, so that sits there. Technically, this gear could fall off that way, but I don't want to overcomplicate things. You know, we could put another cap on it, but I think for now, I just want to test this in real life and see if it's close enough. I think we should be getting there. To protect this pin, maybe what we could do is just put a little kind of flange here so that we're not pushing it all the way, and then if we wiggle it, we might snap that pin off. So maybe what we can do is if I grab my loop cut, okay, same problem, you know, we've got some sort of funky stuff going on with our loops here, but we never mind. If I press question mark here, I should be able to just grab, go into wireframe mode, and just grab these edges. Can I do that? What happens if I do this? What happens if I go E, click, G? No, I don't like that. That's not what I want. What I want to do is, can I select this edge loop? So if I select that edge, and yes, I can. Shift Command or Shift Alt to grab that. That's good. Now, what can I just go E, G, X? I think I should be able to do that. Now I just want to check I haven't made any weird extra faces in doing that. If you want to check if you've done anything weird with extruding, you can, in your overlays, you can put on face orientation. And this is, okay, we've definitely got some weird stuff going on here. That's because we scaled the whole thing by -1, so we kind of turned it inside out. We can fix that now. We can select all our faces and go Mesh, Normals, Recalculate Outside. Okay, that's looking nice. Good. All right, so let's just finish off making that little flange. I'll go into wireframe, grab, oh, I need to be an edge select, grab these edges, and let's be precise. Let's make it exactly 3mm. So I'll snap to this edge, GX, whoop, turn my snapping on, GX, and now turn my snapping off, and let's say GX negative 0.003. Great, so that is now an exactly 3mm gap. Go into our face select just the faces around that ring, and we can press E for extrude, left click, and then let's go like scale Y 1.5 and scale Z 1.5. So now we've got, if I press question mark, we've got that little stopper that should hopefully give us a little bit of protection on that flange. And I'm just going to press question mark and see that we didn't leave any holes. We did at the top. Okay, I just need to fill in this because we just started with an open elbow, which I don't think we clicked the box to fill the end in. So let's just do that now. I'm going to try that Shift Alt. Is that going to give me the whole? Oh, I need to be an edge select. That'll help. Shift Alt there. Great, got the whole ring. F for fill. Okay. So we're getting pretty close. I think the last thing we're missing is maybe a little bit to go on the top to transfer the further rotation to our object. Then I think we're almost there. So what I'm thinking is we're just going to make the D pin and a hexagon here. So let's do that. There's probably another way we can do it even faster. Oh no, let's just reuse our hex shaft again. Look down the x-axis or the y-axis, Shift D, left click. Let's bring it up, GZ, and we're just going to have something that goes in like this. And I'm going to go into edit mode, wireframe. Oh, great, it's already got that selected. GZ, bring it down, and then we're just going to have to match up, you know, flatten that little part to make it in the shape of a D. So let's go into vertex selection and just grab 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this time we will scale it. I think these ones too, if I'm no, just these ones. We're going to scale it on the x-axis by 0, so SX0, and then we're going to snap it down to this vertex. So go to vertex and GX, and I'll turn it on. GX, okay, and so now we've made that straight line with the existing vertexes of the circle. So if I hide the box, we should see that that's not meshing in. Ah, okay, I forgot something. I made a mistake. Sorry about that. I forgot to extrude. Is that what I forgot to do? This looks a bit weird. Something there doesn't look right. What have I done wrong? I moved I moved the vertexes here, but I didn't move them here. Okay, that's an easy fix. Let's just delete these, X, delete faces, and I'll grab this ring here, go into edge mode, Shift, Alt, or whatever key gets you the whole ring, and then E, oops, I'm going to right click that, that was wrong, turn off my snapping, just click my G for grab. Okay, that did actually do the extrude, that's fine, as long as I know it's there. You don't want to hit extrude and then forget about it, so anytime you hit extrude, and even if you hit undo, just check if it made those extra edges. So for me, I can either undo, I'll just do that for your sake. Oops, nope, that's not getting me what I want. I want these edges, Shift, Alt, there we go. And I want to go E, Z, there we go, that's good. Let's look down our orthographic view, go into wireframe, and GZ, I'm just going to put it almost to the bottom of that hole. And then bring back in the box. Okay, then I think we're pretty good. Obviously, we don't need all of this stuff on top. I'm just going to make a tiny thing for our sculpture to sit inside of. So I'm going to delete all of these. X, delete vertexes. Oh, actually no. I'm going to keep. Be a little more selective here. I'm going to go into face select, and I'm going to deselect these so I keep the shaft. Okay, I think that's better. So if I hit X and delete faces, and then yeah, okay, I'll delete these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces. Delete faces. Now I can just grab these vertexes, edge or vertex, whatever we like, and let's just, I don't really know what sculptures you're going to put on top, but let's make this thing, I don't know, maybe 12 millimeters high. So then that's a sort of a 12 millimeter little slot. Actually, let's make it 1 centimeter high, and we'll see what sort of objects you will make. Okay, so I'll go into my snapping, put it on edge, and GZ here, and then I'm just going to go turn that off. GZ 0.01. Okay, so now the sort of the total height of this shaft should be 1 centimeter off the ground, and then I'll just, I've still got that loop selected, press F for fill. So hopefully all of this is correct. I'm going to 3D print it tomorrow and just check that everything works, but it makes sense to me. Okay, the next thing we'll need to do, I'll do the box in a separate tutorial, but what I'm going to do now is I'll show you how to export these to 3D print, and I'll also show you how to animate them so they move. So let's just do a little bit of clearing up. Let's make sure that all of these things are in one collection now. I'll just press G for grab. Yep, that's everything. So let's move that and let's call it mechanism. And I can call one mechanism print, and I can even duplicate the collection and have one called mechanism animate. Okay, so mechanism animate, I'm going to hide that. I'm going to hide my box, and I'm just going to, I don't know, make these objects a little bit more sort of 3D print ready in terms of their orientation. Now, some things that we can take further if we want to. If I go and have a look at all of these objects, okay, I forgot to fill a hole here. That's a good thing I checked. I'm just going to grab these vertexes, convert that to an edge select, and fill the hole. But the other thing I could do here is I could bevel this. So I could go Control B and just put a little bevel there. Just because, again, it's something that has to fit inside of something else. So having a sharp edge, you know, might not be the greatest idea. And, you know, elsewhere in your prints, you could do the same thing. Like if I look at this one, okay, we did fill the edge, but if I go into face select here, change to edge select, and I just press Command B, I could also just give that a little bit of a bevel. You know, I could give it a specific number like 0.0008, but really, again, it's just so it fits in the hole more cleanly. Yeah, and you know, you could technically put a little bevel on this hex shaft, which, okay, I forgot to rotate one of these back. I think that needs to be rotated, let's say 279. Okay, so it's all facing the right way, which technically this will need to be rotated. Whoops. Ooh, hold on, what have I done? Turn off my X-ray, which I accidentally just turned on. And then I'm quite sure I need to rotate this, like, why is that rotating? Oh, because I'm, should be on the X. Oh, how interesting. Oh, its origin is up here, that's why. Okay, no, I was just rotating things because I rotated this back correctly, but now we can see that's out of alignment, and I'd like it to all be rotating the right way. This will come back in our animation, but basically, if I go into just isolate selecting here, we want this object to rotate around its axis, not around, like, you know, it's where Blender thinks the middle point is or anything like that. So what I can do, I want to pick something that the middle of it is the middle of the object. This, because it's flat, it won't be quite the middle, but something like, if I go into that ring, the center of that ring will be the center of this shaft. So if I've got that selected and I press Command S, cursor to selected, now my cursor is in the middle of that object, and I want my origin to be in the middle. So now I can say origin, set origin, object set origin, origin to 3D cursor. So now if I rotate it, it rotates around that origin, which is what I wanted, and I want that rotation to be 9 degrees or -9. So R, -9. So now my pins line up again. Because what's the point in prototyping something if it all stops matching up? Okay, so I just changed some things on this mechanism print, and I want to keep those changes. So I'm actually going to delete this whole mechanism animate collection I made. Now that I've fixed that problem, I'll just duplicate that collection again and call that one mechanism animate, so we don't have to come back and fix the same problem twice. Okay, so let's we'll do the animation first. It's pretty easy. Basically, we want all of these to rotate, okay, and to rotate the same amount at the same speed, because these gears are the same size, they have the same number of teeth, so our rotation ratios are 1-to-1, so it's quite simple. Basically what we can do is if I click on one object, and you want to have a timeline here. If you don't see a timeline, you can check like your animation tab, or if I get rid of this here, if your view looks like this, you can just click the bottom corner and just drag up, make an extra section, and set that to timeline. Okay. So basically I want to have all of these rotating over the course of our animation, which I've still just got set at 250, a full 360 degrees. So let's do that. Let's start with the cogs and see if we can make it make sense. So to make a keyframe on the rotation, I'm just going to click I for insert keyframe, and then I can go to the end, jump to endpoint, or I can press shift right arrow and left arrow. That will go to my endpoints. And I'm just going to put on the Z axis 360 and put in another keyframe. I'm going to do the same thing on this cog. So I'll start here, insert a keyframe, but okay, see, we're not starting at neutral rotations here. It's all been rotated a little bit as we're working. So I want to apply that, because if I start putting in other numbers, it's going to look very strange. So I'm just going to click Object, Apply Rotation. So now that's all set to 0, and I'll keyframe that first frame, and I'll go to the end, and this time we're going to spin it on the x-axis 360. Insert. Now, the only problem here, there's two problems. For a start, I'm rotating the wrong way, so we have to fix that. And you'll also see that they're not rotating at the same speed. They speed up and they slow down. So, okay, so first of all, let's make this going the right way. So I put in 360 where it should have been minus 360. I'll replace that keyframe by pressing I. So now they're both spinning correctly. They're meshing properly. It looks great. It looks like one is turning the other. That's really cool. But they're speeding up and slowing down. The reason for that is that their keyframe interpolation is not linear. Now, what on earth does that mean? Okay, I'll quickly show you. Instead of using the keyframe editor here, I'm just going to jump into the graph editor. And if I press A and select everything and say View, Frame Selected, we'll see that our animation is a curve, which means it starts slow, it speeds up, and then it slows down again. Instead of a curve, we want a straight line, which means it's animating at the same speed the whole time. So this is time, and this is the amount of change, and the change starts slow, speeds up, and slows off again. For many motions, that's exactly what we want. If it's like a person moving or something like that, we don't just, move at the exact same speed. We speed up and slow down. But for mechanical objects, we definitely want a consistent speed. So I'm going to press A and select all the keyframes, right-click, interpolation type, linear. So now that's a straight line. You'll see it's just spinning the same amount over and over again. And I need to do the same thing to this one. Press A to make sure I've got both keyframes selected, right-click, and linear. So now they're just over and over again, perfectly meshing. And it's cool. We're not using any physics to drive this, but the illusion's pretty good. We've got them both meshing. You could do nice things animating here. You could test out your ideas. I really love this. I think there's a lot of cool stuff you could do. And I like this link between the prototyping and the animating. I think that's one of the fun parts of doing this in Blender. I'm going to go back to my, actually I'll leave Graph Editor on, why not? We need to add the same keyframes for all of our other objects. So I'll insert a keyframe at frame 0 here. Shift arrow right to go to frame 250. I'll rotate Z 360. Insert keyframe by pressing I. A to make sure I've got both keyframes selected. Right click, set interpolation to linear. The same with this little connector. Shift left arrow to go to frame 1. I've got to apply the rotation by Object, Apply, Rotation, or simply Command A, Apply, Rotation, and then same thing. Keyframe the first frame, go to the end by pressing Shift right. On the x-axis, we're going to make negative 360, enter, keyframe. You could even drag select both keyframes, right click, interpolation, linear. Okay, and finally for the handle, same thing, shift left to go to frame 1. I've got to apply the rotation because it's got that little 9 there. So Command A, apply rotation, I for insert keyframe, shift right, and then let's make the X -360, enter, I to insert the keyframe, drag, select, and set the interpolation to linear. And I think this one is our last one. So shift left, I to insert the first keyframe, shift right, and let's make Z 360, enter, I to insert the keyframe, and again, I can press A to select all keyframes, right click, interpolation mode, linear. Okay, so now if I press play, it's cool. You know, it really looks like they're all doing their thing, and I can even go into material preview, and you know, we've got these objects that they look like they're physically connected because we've animated them all properly so that they're all moving as we hope our real sculpture will, all the way down to the base here. So that's pretty cool. Now I'll just go back into my solid mode, go back to frame 1, and I want to get them ready to 3D print. So it's actually, you know, I can still think of lots of little mistakes I've left. One thing you'll see is I didn't apply the scale on all of my objects. I probably should have done that. I haven't animated any of my scale, so I might be able to get away with it. Like my elbow joint, I can press Command A, apply the scale, and it doesn't seem to affect the animation. So did I forget anything else? Yes, my hex shaft, Command A, apply the scale. And oh yeah, look at the scale there. They're all completely different. Command A, apply the scale. And this one too, Command A, apply the scale. Okay, so the 3D printing ones will definitely need to do that, because in the 3D printing, if I just press pause, if I go into our 3D printed collection, if I sent this to 3D print now, it's going to ignore these numbers and it's going to think of it like this, like it's all one. So it's all completely wrong now, right? The wrong proportions, the wrong size, and so on. So that's why we need to apply the scale. So I'm going to go through my print collection and just apply the scale. Command A, apply scale, apply scale, apply scale, apply scale, apply scale. Okay, that's good. The other thing I can see with this object, that little dot is its origin, and its origin is not anywhere near the object, so that could be annoying. So I'm just going to go object, set origin. I could either do origin to geometry, that's probably okay. It depends how the 3D slicer interprets it. Like another thing I could do is I could select that face, set the 3D cursor by pressing Shift S to the face and say origin, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. Then technically I could, you know, I could be really clean and line them all up. I could put this at 0 and have it like that. I'm going to kind of do a soft version of that. This one, okay, so this is something where we might check with Janan. This will be an interesting object to 3D print. If we 3D print this R90 like this, we'll need support material underneath it. But if we 3D print it like this, we'll have to check if it can do that without falling over. But I'm going to take this as the first guess and I'll test it myself. And yeah, we might have to clean out a little bit of support material from that hole. Yeah, or I mean, we could even try doing it 180 like this. I don't know, we'll have to test it out and see what works best. I'm going to do the same thing, put my cursor here, put my origin to my origin to my 3D cursor, and just put that to 0 and just move across. Basically, I'm sort of aligning things as I want them to appear in the printer. So I'm just now removing all my rotations. These two are the same, so that shouldn't make a big difference. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so the origin of this is all the way down there, so that's no good. Let's again, I'm going to put its origin here, cursor to selected, origin to 3D cursor, and now if I put it to 0, it's kind of on the floor of the space. And basically we're treating them now like components. I'll put that to 0. I might put the X rotation to 90. and the location to 0. And that's looking a lot better as something we'd want to send to print. Now, the other thing is, it will be really tempting to select all of these, join them, and send them to print. But we don't want to do that because the 3D printer will treat them all as one object, and it won't be able to change their orientation when we print, because it'll be, you know, changing all of them like this, or, you know, like this. We don't want that. We want them to be as separate objects. So I'm just going to export them one at a time. So here I'm going to select my gear, and I'm going to go File, Export, STL, which is stereolithography, which is the file type we use for 3D printing. And I'm going to make a new folder in 3D Fundamentals called STL, and let's do it mechanism. Go inside there. Now, last thing I need to do, I need to tick selection only. That's important. And I can even change the name. Let's call this Gear 1 selection only. If we don't tick that, it's going to export everything in your file, and you'll have this enormous 3D print STL, and it'll come out as a total mess. So selection only, really important. Gear 1 export. Okay. You know, I can put this in the middle as well. Sometimes that can help the 3D printer know where the middle of the object is and so on. Export, STL, selection only. I can click this plus and make it Gear 2. Export, and then this one, I'll put that in the middle of the space as well. File, Export, STL, and let's call this one Crank, because it's the handle. Export, and then let's put this one in the middle. File, Export, STL, and we can call this Shaft 1. Selection only is ticked. And we can put this one in here. I got to remember what all of these are now. What was this one? Okay, yeah, this is Shaft 2. This is the one that connects to the crank. So let's go File, Export, STL, Shaft 2. Selection only is ticked. And then finally, let's I need to apply the rotation. Put it in the middle of our scene. Export, STL, and let's call this Pin. Selection only is ticked. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. You should be ready to 3D print these objects. I'm going to make another video on how to make the box. Okay, talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.